Hi, so today I'll be talking about communism in Vietnam. The research question that I picked for my assignment was, how did communism affect the people of Vietnam? Vietnam is a single-party state located in Southeast Asia. It's also in the Indo-Chinese area. Single party is the Communist Party in Vietnam. Vietnam uses Marxism, also known as communism. The country went through various wars to achieve what they call communism. In the following slides, I will talk about the key events that Vietnam went through in order to achieve communism. And at the end, I will summarize all the information I provided and answer my research question in a final conclusion. To the bottom left, you will see a picture of the Vietnamese flag. The iconic yellow and red colors symbolize the communist flag. Here you see a picture of Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, born in 1890, was the glorified communist leader of Vietnam. He is probably the most influential leader to ever lead Vietnam. His corpse is now preserved to this date in the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum. The iconic figure led the Viet Minh independence movement in 1941. This was a revolutionary nationalist league which fought for independence in 1941. Ho Chi Minh's father, as you can see by the name, was a teacher who was also employed by a French school. Ho Chi Minh's father was a nationalist himself, further influencing his children to follow in the same footsteps. Ho Chi Minh knew that there was a fight for independence. He knew that he had to fight for independence with the country's pride in mind. He also worked in a lot of places when he was young, from a schoolteacher to a sailor sailing the vast oceans of the world. During his travels as a sailor, he read about various books and texts published by Karl Marx, the man known to write the Communist Manifesto. Ho eventually managed to become one of the leading figures of the French Communist Party in 1924. After that, Ho visited the Soviet Union, where he was inspired and influenced by the Russian Revolution. Ho knew that he was going to be in trouble with the French if he went back to Vietnam after so many years of being gone. Therefore, he went to the border between China and Vietnam and stayed there. There, he met other nationalists who were exiled from the country. They were exiled for various reasons: crimes, treasons, or any other thing. With them, Ho Chi Minh formed the Vietnamese Revolutionary League. Ho Chi Minh did a lot for his country. He fought for independence and also helped to win the Vietnam War to some point. Because of his influence and the Soviet Union's influence, Vietnam is now a communist state. So the Vietnam War, as you see by the picture to the right, was a really devastating war. It was the fourth most devastating, to be exact, with the Cold War and the two world wars in the top three. The Americans wanted to stop the widespread of communism in the Indo-Chinese area, which included Cambodia and Vietnam. Therefore, they deployed troops to that area. Vietnam, along with many other countries, suffered massive amounts of deaths. Vietnam specifically suffered from 2 million deaths, also leaving millions dislocated and psychologically and physically traumatized. War ravaged the lands and onto the fields and roads of Vietnam, further leaving a geological impact on the Vietnamese landscape, making conflicts such as agriculture more difficult to conduct in the future. Here are two of the most key events in Vietnamese history: the American War, which I already explained in the slide before, and the French colonization of Vietnam. In 1947, a few French priests arrived in Vietnam to work and engage in foreign relationships. However, they soon created a sort of brotherhood of sorts and they grew larger and larger. People began converting to Christianity. This led to the Vietnamese launching genocides and many other abusive events towards the Catholics. The French, who heard about the abuse, launched troops to Vietnam. When the troops got there, they realized that Vietnam was a perfect place to engage in trade with Inner China. The French's inner motive was to trade with Inner China. That's why they used Vietnam as a sort of transit to collect all the materials. The French also used Vietnam as a base for trade. After a decade of French rule, the Vietnamese, along with the help of the Indo-Chinese neighbors, finally won the war. So in this timeline, I'll talk about the history of Vietnam. I will list a few key events that led to communism in Vietnam. Keep in mind that these events only occurred and helped to make Vietnam a communist state in the future. So the first event, and probably the earliest event in my timeline, was when this priest, as you can see by the name, aided Nguyen An to revive the Nguyen dynasty after the Tay Son rebellion, which wiped out almost all of the dynasty. The Nguyen dynasty is formed in 1802, led by Nguyen An, the emperor of the dynasty. Vietnam is then colonized by the French as a potential trade route to China. The French establish a sense of social Darwinism, where they think that Vietnam is an inferior power and they're weak, because they're unfit, as Darwin mentions. This can be related to Darwin's theory of natural selection, where only the fittest will survive. The French thought of themselves as the fittest, while they thought of Vietnam as the unfit. Therefore, being the one in power, they thought they had to help Vietnam. However, the Vietnamese people had a much different opinion on the situation. In 1945, Ho Chi Minh declared independence on the 2nd of September. 2nd of September is now known as the Independence Day of Vietnam. In 1954, Vietnam finally gained independence after 9 years after the Declaration of Independence. The final fight, or the climactic fight of the Dien Bien Phu, was the last fight which won Vietnam the war. In 1955, America engaged in warfare to stop the spread of communism in northern and southern Vietnam. The war began on 1st November 1955. In 1975, Vietnam wins the war against America, resulting in almost 1 million deaths in Vietnam on the 30th of April 1975. In conclusion, the people of Vietnam were heavily affected throughout the process of achieving perfect communism. They had to go through economic crashes, like in 1889, deadly wars, and the formation of colonies, all within 1.5 centuries. This really showed how much the Vietnamese people went through to achieve independence as a communist state. Now, Vietnam follows the Communist Manifesto, which explains the governance of equal rights and shared property. Therefore, in result, my research question is answered by saying that the Vietnamese people were heavily impacted through both economic crashes in 1989, wars, the American War, colonization by the French, and many other events that took place in Vietnam. So, in conclusion, my research question was answered, and yeah. Here's the bibliography and the sources I used for my research. And yep, thanks for watching.